12th Parliament. This meeting is being broadcast live on the Parliament channel and is also being streamed on the Parliament's YouTube channel, PALView. Today, we are convening our second public hearing pursuant to our follow-up examinations on the second report of the committee in the 11th Parliament, 2015 to 2020, on an inquiry into certain aspects of the administration of the Tobago House of Assembly. Today, we are pleased to have officials from the following divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly: the Division of Food Security, National Resources, Environment and Sustainable Development, and members from the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. At this stage, I would like the members present from the Division of the Food Security, National Resources, Environment and Sustainable Development to please introduce yourselves.
Yes, good morning. Ricardo Alfred, Chairman of TADCO, Tobago Agribusiness Development Company.
Good morning. My name is Karen Shaw, Agro-Investment Specialist with the division.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I am Sherry Ann Edwards-Louis, Administrator in the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment, and the Sustainable Development.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. I am Tamika Seals Manzano, Director of Food Crop Production in the division.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I am Martha Carter, Planning Officer in the division.
Morning all, and I welcome you all to this meeting today. At this stage, would the members of the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation please introduce yourselves?
Good morning, Chair. I am Acting Administrator Suresh Duku.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is John Arnold. I'm the CEO of the Tobago Festivals Commission Limited.
My name is Alicia Edwards. I'm the Executive Chairman of the Tobago Tourism Agency Limited, and I'm really happy to be here this morning.
Good morning all, and thank you members for being, sorry.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sandra Ortoni. I'm the Program Coordinator of the Program Coordination Unit of the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation.
Thank you all for being here this morning and have a good morning. I hope you have a good morning and a productive morning. At this stage, I would like to introduce myself. I am Independent Senator Dr. Varma Diyal Singh. I'm the chair of this committee, and I would like my other members to please introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. I am Janti Lachmedial. I'm a member of the committee.
Morning, Chairman. Morning, everyone. Lawrence Hislop, member.
Good morning, all. I am Ayana Webster-Roy, member.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Esmond Ford, member of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you all. At this stage, I'd like to remind all the objectives of the inquiry. We had an initial inquiry into certain aspects of the administration of Tobago House of Assembly, which was held during the period of March to June 2016. The committee's report on this inquiry was presented in the House of Representatives and in the Senate on December 7, 2016, and on December 19, 2016. So the primary aim of this follow-up is to evaluate the progress made by the THA in implementing the recommendations contained in the captioned report with regard to A, projects and initiatives aimed at improving revenue generation, B, the state of tourism sector in Tobago, C, the efficiency and reliability of transportation services, and D, the development of the agricultural sector in Tobago. At this stage, I would like the following persons to make a brief opening statement, and I would start with Mrs. Sherry-Ann Edwards-Louis, the Administrative Acting of the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, Environment, and Sustainable Development of the THA.
Chair, I want to begin my introductory remarks with a quote directly from the World Bank, an article which was updated as late as March 2023, indicated, and I quote, agricultural development is one of the most powerful tools to end extreme poverty, boost shared prosperity, and feed a projected 9.7 billion people by 2050. Growth in the agricultural sector is 2 to 4 times more effective in raising incomes among the poorest compared to other sectors. At a regional level, we understand that CARICOM has signaled its commitment to the development of the agricultural sector when they did so at the Agri-Investment Forum that was convened in 2022. And we know that the CARICOM leaders are currently meeting in Trinidad, and they have also tabled food security as high on the agenda for discussions. And even right here in Tobago, the Honorable Chief Secretary indicated in his budget presentation for 2024 that their administration, the current administration, is regarding agriculture as the #1 priority. So the division is mindful of its very weighty mandate. We understand that we have much to do, but we do so being mindful that there are a number of issues which plague Tobago's agricultural sector, some of which include climate change, disruptions in the supply chain logistics, an aging farming population, aging infrastructure, and of course, we have inadequate resources. Nevertheless, in spite of those challenges highlighted, the division continues to commit to being relevant in ensuring that we meet the demands of the stakeholders and that we are poised to really develop a resilient agriculture sector in Tobago. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I'm thrilled to hear it's the #1 priority. At this stage, would a member of the division of Mr. Duku, would Mr. Suresh Duku, the Administrator, Acting Administrator, Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, give us a 2-minute opening remark, please?
Good morning to the chair again and everyone present. I am Mr. Suresh Duku, Acting Administrator of the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, Tobago House of Assembly. I firstly wish to thank you for the opportunity to lead a team of witnesses before this esteemed committee. This division is responsible for positioning Tobago as the preferred tourist destination by providing authentic experiences through people-oriented development strategies, partnership with stakeholders, and a highly motivated and knowledgeable team of employees. Following our last appearance, our aim today is to once again provide additional factual information and data that will comply with the committee's inquiry into certain aspects of the Tobago House of Assembly, management of the island's tourism, culture, and transportation sector. Currently, the division has 3 special purpose committees that fall directly under its purview. These are the Tobago Tourism Agency Limited, the Tobago Festivals Commission Limited, and the Tobago Performing Arts Company, which are directly responsible for driving the rejuvenation and competitiveness of Tobago's tourism, festivals, and performing arts. These companies are tasked with leading the charge related to redevelopment of our product and repositioning of Tobago as the premier island destination, In light of this, I'm once again joined by a team of competent technical personnel who are here in their various capacities to elaborate further on matters relating to the operations within their different sectors. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duku. Again, you're no stranger to us. You were here last time, and I'm a bit happy to have you again present in our meeting today.
Thank you, Chair.
At this stage, I'd like to remind both committee members and officials to direct their questions through the chair, and remind members and officials to kindly activate your microphones on your devices when you're acknowledged by the chair, and turn it off when you have concluded your contribution. So at this stage, I mentioned we are now in part 2 of looking at any sort of ways that we can see, have we met the objectives from the last inquiry? Have we fallen short? If we have fallen short, why we have fallen short, and what we could do to improve it. So the whole object is to try to see how we can improve the situation, or any sort of improvements, any sort of assistance you may need, any sort of new initiatives that can come forward, as well as our Joint Select Committee. We have the purview to look at the Tobago House of Assembly. We are the only Joint Select Committee that actually looks into the runnings of it. How efficient is it? So there's sometimes we may look at what is in store for the future, as well as look at the past, why it has failed, what we can use to beef things up, because we actually look at the accountability aspect also. So I was very happy to hear that, Mrs. Sherilyn Edwards mentioned that, to end poverty, you need to have the trust in agriculture, and it's a #1 priority. And you mentioned the CARICOM initiative. So at this stage, I would like to pose a question really to the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, and Environment and Sustainable Development. So we all know that the food security is very important. And you mentioned food chains. During the COVID, we learned about the supply chains. We know about the disruption. So therefore, a nation's ability to feed itself is paramount. So I want to look at the idea of the mega farms. Your submissions that you have given to our committee stated that 51.8 million is budgeted for the implementation of the 2 mega farm projects in fiscal 2024. I want to know, what is the proposed date for the commencement of the mega farms project?
Chair, permit me to invite Mr. Ricardo Alfred of TATCO to respond to that question.
Yes, Chairman, thank you for the question. You asked the proposed date. Currently, we are actually identifying the areas where these mega farms will go. We have identified that there will be 2 mega farms, one of which will be dealing with poultry, the other will be dealing with mixed crop. The date that we are looking at, once the finances is there, we're looking at the next fiscal that takes us into 2024.
So you have identified the ventures you want. Poultry is one, and mixed farming. And in terms of mixed farming, what do you have in intention in terms of that mixed farming? Give us some idea.
Right. So through the chair, what is happening on the island is that we have identified a couple of crops, that being the short-term crops that we can do in terms of building out the sector as relates to the school feeding program. So I'm saying things like the lettuce, the tomatoes, and then we're going to be looking at the long-term crops as well as relates to getting different alternative food into these different programs. So it's a mixture of both short-term and long-term crops.
So in terms of the long term, you're looking at alternative foods. So give me an idea, like what sort of things you're looking at in alternative foods?
Yeah, so currently we are looking at the long-term crops as relates to the ground provision, which is the cassava, the sweet potato, and the dasheen. What we have right now at TATCO is that we have a lot of different value-added items that are on the market here in Tobago. In terms of the cassava mash, the cassava fruit cake, the dasheen cereal, all the plantain mix, the waffle mix, pancake mix, all these different mix that we are definitely doing to get persons involved in that type of structure.
So presently, give me an idea about the farming situation in Tobago. Do you have farmers producing enough of these provisions from before, dasheen, sweet potato, lettuce? Is there deficiency? Do you have the need to import foodstuff from Trinidad and elsewhere?
Right, so presently we buy the cassava from the local entities right here and the farmers right here in Tobago. However, due to the heavy rainfalls and stuff that would have occurred last year, we would have entered into an agreement, an MOU with NAMDEFCO, in which they as well are assisting us in terms of getting some of these raw materials to produce these wonderful products.
So then you are still dependent on food from Trinidad to come to feed Tobago. You're not self-sufficient in that sense with those provision and sweet potato dasheen. You're still dependent on some sort of import factor.
That is correct. And through the agreement with NAMDEFCO, what we are doing, what I can share with you as well, is that we are building capacity as it relates to the farmers. So there's a program that we are currently looking at in collaboration with this division in terms of getting the extension officers to go and certify the farms. So, and then they will get the approvals from the ministry down in Trinidad. What this will do definitely is to open not just the persons in Tobago, but the regional people or regional players as relates to what the farm is producing, projections, what type of practices they're doing, irrigation systems, that will definitely assist us in terms of building out that capacity and then having a sustainable product here on the island.
If you have mega farms, will that somehow cause the small farmer to lose business? Have you looked into that factor in terms of coexisting mega farms and the small farmer?
Right. What is happening is that with the different mega farms is to identify an area or a certain portion of land that can be divided up into different holdings where persons would now be collaborating with us and the mega fund in terms of building out a sustainable product, where it be cassava, tomatoes, whatever. So it's building capacity with the existing persons. We're not leaving them behind.
So you are dependent on your farmers that are already planting to come on board, as well as I see somewhere down the line you are training other persons and youths to come on board. But I asked a question, the mega farm, we had a dream of mega farms in Trinidad at one stage, where I think it was in Chagaramas, and that structure was not sustained or didn't maintain. Did you look at the reasons why our mega farms in Trinidad didn't work, to see if when you put your mega farm in a position to go forward, that you would not have the same failure that we in Chagaramas had?
Unfortunately, I didn't see that vision that you mentioned there, but what we are doing is looking at the two farms. We have identified poultry versus the crops. So what is happening is that we are able to have data as relates to how much chicken is actually coming to Tobago. Just to give you some figures, it's about 230 to 250,000 birds come to Tobago on a monthly basis. So what we are doing actually is having some contract farming initiatives that we would have done at TACO by providing the inputs. And when I say inputs, I mean the chick and the feed, because currently at TACO we sell various types of feed, right? So we give them the inputs and get them involved in terms of building capacity, growing their farms, and then we market the chicken into the various programs to build capacity.
Do you have the labor to put on the farms? Because I think a challenge we had in Trinidad at our venture is that, I mean, we were getting, I think, the Cubans to come in and assist us. Do you have the labor? Do you have to depend on migrant labor? Do you have to depend on labor from the rest of the CARICOM coming in to assist? Or do you have the labor capacity for your projected proposal?
Right. What is happening is that we at TACO, in collaboration with the division, is we are trying to get a full-time and to move away from the dependency on THA. So the private persons, they employ labor on their farms. So we collaborate with them to factor in different inputs that they would need, like where we would come in terms of providing some veterinary services, providing some support in terms of the ground preparation. We would have did some work with Master Mix and different entities there in Trinidad and training our personnel to better assist the farmers in Tobago. So private persons they employ. Yes.
Chair, through you, if I could interject at this point in time.
Sure.
Just to add to what Mr. Alfred is stating, is that yes, we are aware that in terms of labor, we do have challenges in outfitting the farms with labor for production. We would have had in the past and continue to have some assistance through our URP program where we assign workers to the farms to assist farmers who may have difficulty in acquiring the labor for their operations. So that the mega farms of itself, one of the major concepts of it is that it is built on small holdings with farmers who already have a certain level of capacity managing that level of production. So they may have systems in place with labor already to facilitate their production. Thank you.
Thank you. I remember in Trinidad once there was an idea, a discussion of having CPEP workers trained also to go and help with the farming. Have you considered that aspect also?
Yes, Chair. As I mentioned before, to the URP and the CPEP program, we do have assignments of workers to some of the farmers' holdings with an arrangement of building up the stipend that is given to the workers so that they pay a portion of the labor cost. So we have worked in the past to develop that capacity. And with that, it will also help to pull or encourage young entrepreneurs out of the government service into private enterprise. So it's a system where you have training going on, where you have exposure, and you have the encouragement of the persons, whether youths or others, to facilitate them getting into the sector and into agriculture. So it's a twofold approach that we are trying to take.
Good. I'm encouraged by hearing that. But I just want to inquire again. The submission stated 51.8 million is budgeted for the implementation of the mega farms. Does that also include labor cost?
Yes, that is correct. It does include labor costs, and there's some aspect of training as well.
Thank you. At this stage, Member Lochbidial has a question I think you wanted to pose to the member.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Through you, I just wanted to find out more. I heard the representative mention the school feeding program that the mega farm would be able to assist. Could you tell us a little bit more about how much of the school feeding program in Tobago would become do you anticipate could become self-sufficient through the mega farm project? And as well, have you reached out to the hotels and restaurants that cater to tourists on the island to ascertain, for example, if you could perhaps increase their demand for locally grown food at the restaurants and the hotels and so on, and start marketing locally grown food through the mega farms? And if there's potential for the mega farms to produce a lot of food for the tourism sector, so that you could have that linkage taking place. And my third question, one of the things that we experience in Trinidad with respect to farming, and one of the major challenges that we have here would be flooding. Particularly with poultry, you would have seen, for example, thousands of chickens lost in flooding in South Trinidad, particularly. So have you looked at the issue of flooding, how it may affect the areas that you're identifying, and what strategies you intend to put in place to avoid massive losses to your agricultural development as a result of flooding?
As for you, I would like to respond to the members. So we have three aspects of the question pertaining to the school feeding, the linkages with the tourism sector, and also the flooding issues. So with regard to tourism, the Tobago House of Assembly generally employs an approach of collective administration. So the division currently already partners with tourism in a number of initiatives. And just before COVID, there was a committee that was set up to deal with ensuring that we reached out to the supermarket sector as well as the tourism sector, the restaurants and the hotels, so that we can have an idea of what their menus would have been like, so that we would encourage the farmers to plant in a cyclical manner to address the needs of those sectors. So Mr. Alfred can respond more with regard to the school feeding, and in particular, the flooding issues will be addressed by the Director of Food Crop Production.
Right, thank you. Right, so as it relates to the school feeding program, so currently we at TADCO are in conversation with a few contractors who supply the school feeding program. So they would identify certain items that they would want. So things like the body, the pumpkin chopped up into different cubes, we package them and then have an arrangement with them. And as well as we provide things like the fish and the chicken into that program as well. So we are working with them. We are about 20% here dealing with them. And so we are working them. It's a collaborative effort that we are working with them.
Through you, Chair, if I could also interject to add some information to that. The division of itself is collaborating with the Food and Agricultural Organization and ICA, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture, to strengthening. There's a program that is on to strengthen the school feeding program and allowing farmers access to the program. So we had persons trained in the division, and we also had a program roll out to the farmers. So together with the formal part of the collaboration, we also have TADCO now, who is doing the actual work in actually placing farmers' produce within the program. So that is basically a two-pronged approach that we have.
Okay, so the bottom line really, you're saying that, you know, through tourism and school feeding, you see avenues for including the locally grown food on the mega farms into, you know, getting them onto menus, into the program, and reducing your food import bill through these two avenues particularly.
Yes.
Okay, and I suppose it may be a bit early in the project for you to anticipate by how much, but you would be able to, I don't know if you have any estimates of figures and so on, of what you expect the demand from these two avenues to be in terms of your anticipated production of food.
Right, so currently through our poultry program, we would have introduced so far into the Tobago space 60,700 chickens into this space. This makes up about roughly 42 plus farmers in which they are building out capacity. So they would have moved from the 500s. Now some are doing thousands and 2000s. So it's a building process going forward in terms of reaching that goal of being sustainable.
Okay. Right, and the flooding question.
So to answer the last part, through you, Chair, to answer the last part of that question in terms of flooding, in Tobago, that is not a major issue because of the topography and location of farms in Tobago.
Yeah, so even though it's not an issue now, but you have to look at the climate changes that are occurring. So I guess you may have to factor in how you're going to at what at elevation of land you may want to build those poultry farms, or either have their the whole structure raised a bit on stilts so it can be higher. I would like to, with regard to the current technical and financial assistance provided to farmers, I want to ask a question. What is the number of farmers who have benefited from the farmer training provided by the Kendall Farm School?
The Director of Food Crop Production will respond.
Yes, in response to that question, Chair. On average, we train about 50 participants per course per year, on average. So far, just looking at the figures, give me 1 minute. We have conducted 27 trainings for this year. So we would have affected or impacted 964 persons. Well, it's for the last fiscal to present.
Yeah, you know, we broke up a little bit. It's 900 and how many persons you said?
960 would have benefited up to this stage.
And of those persons who had benefited, do you have any way of tracking them to say if they are doing if they have been utilizing the knowledge that they have learned, or?
So, Chair, the number of participants at every training course is recorded, and the extension staff, as well as research and information officers from the RADIS program, and the RADIS program being our research and information systems unit. They will go out to collect data on the activities that the farmers are practicing. So we are looking at tracking the implementation of the components of the training that they would have gotten through our Kendall Farm School and other training avenues.
Are those programs for only registered farmers, or anyone could come on board to learn?
They are open to the public, and we do have some targeted training from time to time.
And do you give a stipend for those persons attending these courses?
No stipend is offered for attending the courses.
So people come on willingly, take part of these courses, and they may go out in society and utilize the knowledge, and you basically track their, well, you could track their progress to the success of your program. So I think this is something we need to look at in future. And regarding the improvement of the monitoring system for climate change, the impact on agricultural sector, what was the result of the pilot for the ARCGIS database system tested in Tobago?
The initial pilot was held in 2022 as part of the FAO partnership with the division. At that time, we had 2 enumerators attached to the program, and due to inclement weather, some of the activities were hampered. However, we were able to sample 40 farmers and collect information which was uploaded to the site. What we have done thus far since would have been to assign one person so far to continue the program so that we can continue to collect data, which of course will assist in the development of our programs and planning down.
Okay, so in terms of climate change, what is the greatest challenge you have with climate change affecting Tobago? Is it coastal erosion? Is it the increase in rainfall? Because I mean, it doesn't seem, flooding doesn't seem to be affecting you yet. Huh? So what are the main challenges you have there?
To answer that question in terms of the climate change that we would have climate change effects we would have experienced, the major thing would have been drought at this time. Now with the onset of rains, we're going to be looking to see what kind of effects we have gotten. In the past, we would have recognized, we would have had land slippage occurring in some areas. Therefore, we would have targeted soil conservation in our training efforts to address those particular issues. Therefore, in other words, we're exposing the farming community to practices that would conserve their soil and mitigate against land slippage in their areas.
Okay, thank you. At this stage, Member Ayana Webster Roy would like to pose a few questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just going back to the Mega Farm project. Over the years, quite a number of young persons in Tobago would have been trained under YAPA, and I know there was an intention for them to receive passes of land to advance their training and to establish businesses. I wanted to know if the YAPA graduates would be involved in the Mega Farm project, or how the division will engage the persons who would have graduated from YAPA. And also, I heard in the presentation mentions made of extension officers certifying the farmers. I wanted to know if this certification had anything to do with organic farming, or if on the Mega Farm project, if you're going to focus on organic farming, because we know one of the things we boast about in Tobago is the quality of our produce. Persons say when they buy the produce that come up on the boat, it would last so long, but when it's something that you know is grown in Tobago, it has a very long and stable shelf life. So I just wanted to find out those two before I go on to my other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Through you, Chair, and to address the members' question, we would have ended the YAPA program in Tobago in fiscal 2017-2018, where we had 60 graduates coming out of that. Some of those graduates would have gone on to the diploma program and university programs at the University of the West Indies. And in fact, one or two of them are currently employed with the division. So out of the remaining number of persons, of course, they are available to take up positions in terms of assisting in the development of the agricultural programs on these mega farms as they are called upon to do so by the occupants of that program, of course. Yes, so there always is that opportunity. No direct involvement in terms of getting these YAPA persons involved has been considered otherwise at the moment, except through that methodology. The next question you asked would have been, could you just remind me of that second question?
You would have mentioned farmers being certified. I want to know that certification had to do with organic farming, or what was the nature of the certification? And during the Mega Farm project, are we going to focus on quality controls? Because I would have given the example where we know in Tobago, people boast about the quality of a produce. It will last long on the shelf as opposed to what comes up on the boat. So are we going to look towards organic farming? What is the plan there?
Again, through you, Chair, to answer the question, in terms of the certification program, what we are looking at is to get farmers GAP certified. In other words, we are looking at good agricultural practices. A component of that would be safe and judicious, a component of that would be safe and judicious use of organic pesticides, biopesticides, and of course, safety practices. We remember that in Tobago, the culture is that we have a low use of pesticides, low pesticide use in Tobago, which makes our food relatively safer compared to others. Yeah. So primary focus of the certification program.
Okay, thanks. In terms of the model sheep and goat farm, that project that you're supposed to have, what is the status of that? And also, how is that going to benefit our farmers as well as those persons who even though we might not be in farming at present, would have an interest in farming? And would it also be used to assist students who are doing agriculture at school?
With regard to the sheep and goat production, the Blenheim Sheep Multiplication Unit is what is charged with the responsibility of having breeding stock available for farmers. Yes, recently we would have undertaken a partnership with the Cuban South-South Partnership Program through the FU program organization, Food and Agricultural Organization. And as part of this exercise, we're looking at beefing up the breeding program at the stations. They would have identified and made recommendations. They would also have commended us in terms of our production at the station, in terms of the breeds that we have available. So this station is also charged with the responsibility of demonstrating good practices and best practices, as well as having available material for the farmers. When I say that, we do stock, of course, to bolster production.
And I would ask about how you all will engage students who are doing agriculture at the CXC level through this particular project.
Yes, so this particular project lends itself to research opportunities for at the secondary school system and at the university level. So when we have, for example, ECIAP students coming across through their internship program, we have them exposed to the technology available there, different breeds, how the conformity of the animals to our particular environment. And we have that opportunity also available to all schools actually across Tobago once they make a request through the Office of the Administrator with that.
Okay, thanks. In terms of the veterinary diagnostic laboratory, what's the state of that?
Diagnostic, right.
Through you, Chair, respond to the member's question. We would have recognized the need. I'll start again through you, Chair.
My internet went down.
Chair, should I continue?
Yes, proceed. Thank you.
All right. Yes. So to answer the member's question, we would have identified the need to have full capacity of laboratory facilities on the island, in particular in terms of veterinary diagnostic services. We would have developed it as a DP, what we call a DP project, a development project on the island, and of course, you'd have gotten one fraction of an allocation to that. So we have already taken the lead in terms of replacing the old facility and improving at least acquiring equipment, what we can at this time, towards the improvement of the diagnostic lab. And we are at the conception stage of identifying the area for the laboratory and the conceptual diagrams for the construction of the new facility.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you. Another question, Mr. Chairman.
I just want to, yeah.
Go on.
I just wanted to find out one thing, because this veterinary diagnostic laboratory, the old one existed, you say, before. How was it heavily utilized? I'm wondering the need for this. Is it a need for this services here, or could that services not be somehow tapped into Trinidad services? So give me an idea why we went that way in terms of having that service there and the need for new service. In terms of I'm looking at cost effective. So give us an idea about the history of that diagnostic laboratory.
Okay, so the diagnostic lab, the veterinary lab, services all the farmers across Tobago, right? In terms of the number, of farm. We have, for example, 327 plus in livestock production. Yes, the quantum of farmers therefore necessitates the veterinary services in Tobago. That does not debar us, of course, from collaborating with Trinidad, which we have been doing over the years in terms of sending blood samples for analysis. But what we are trying to do now is to improve our capability in Tobago to have more real-time information and diagnostics for the farmer in order for them to improve their necessary production practices on this farm.
And do you have enough vets in the island, or do you need more vets to come and assist you with the testing of these animals?
Yes. Chair, just to answer your question, we do have enough veterinary officers at the moment. We have at this time 7 officers in the employ of the division, and they carry out the duties as required across the island.
Sure, thank you. Ms. Ayana Webster, you could continue your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to get some more information about the plant protection unit. I know in the recent past, we had an issue with citrus greening, and a number of farmers didn't understand what's happening. Even where I live, and my father-in-law, who is a farmer, would have had a similar situation where citrus just died and we don't know what's happening. I wanted to know when the division will embark on additional the own home gardening initiative. When would the division embark on additional clinics? And also, what is the state of the in terms of the capacity for the plant protection unit? How many officers you have available on the island to go out and provide services to persons in Tobago?
Just to react to your question, just to confirm the question, because we broke up on this side. Through your chair, just to confirm, we want to know the number of plant clinics or the plans to improve the number of plant clinics on the island and the capacity that we have in the plant protection units, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So through your chair to answer the member's question, we currently...
Sorry, I'm having some internet problems with last year.
Okay. So to answer the member's question, Chair, we have increased the number of plant clinics just after the COVID period to have a plant clinic Mondays. Instead of having it every quarter, that would have been the traditional method. We now have them every Monday. It's available to the public between the hours of 9 and 1 in terms of bringing in planting material, of course, packaged well, so we don't want to spread anything to the division. So we have already increased our capacity in that respect. In terms of the plant protection unit, it's staffing. We currently have 1 plant protection officer, and we have a lab at the Goldsboro, at Goldsboro, Power Farm Road. The unit is supported by the extension section of the division. So the plant protection officer would from time to time train the extension staff on the new or emerging pests and diseases that arise or have a potential to arise, so that we are equipped to meet the needs of the farmers as required concerning pest and disease management.
Do you intend to increase that number from 1 officer? Do you have any plans to recruit additional persons in the coming fiscal?
Through you, Chair, to answer that question, of course, there is a need to always assess where you are and one officer with the quantum of work that is required. Remember, it's 3,000 plus farmers we have in Tobago. It is, of course, very necessary for us to bolster, as you have clearly identified, to bolster the unit. So there are plans in place to increase the assignment of staff to that unit. Handle any outbreaks that we have in terms of officers as well as support staff.
Do you have an organizational chart for that unit?
Yes. Yes, to answer that question through you, Chair, yes, we have a departmental organizational chart which identifies the key components of each unit.
Okay, and based on your chart, what is the ideal number of officers and different technical persons required so that we have a fully functioning unit?
Right. Right, so for that unit to be fully functional, we will need a laboratory assistant, at least 2 laboratory assistants, one for the prep work in terms of analysis of diseases, and one for the prep work in terms of the analysis of pests. On the technical side, we also need technical or field officers to assist the plant protection officer in terms of providing field diagnostics, analysis, and support. And the unit would also require a labor cadre to assist in any collection, eradication, and surveillance exercise.
So I am looking at the fact that 3,000 farmers. I was not aware that the amount of farmers in Tobago, and I'm wondering now if it's just 160 square miles and 60,000 population, you should have the capacity to feed yourself. If not soon, I mean, this is something you could aim at, definitely. According to your submission, the Tobago Agricultural Research Institute, TARI, has not yet been operationalized and will be operationalized in the fiscal year 2024. What areas of research is TARI expected to focus on?
Chair, our agro-investment specialists will respond to that question.
Chair, just permit me a few minutes to locate my notes. Just one. Yes, the TARI Institute, as we are trying to roll out the implementation of the Institute, we have looked at some specific areas of emphasis that we would like to focus on. And we are looking at, and I can list them, the artificial intelligence in agriculture, climate smart techniques, alternative energy development, data management systems, crop development, livestock development, agribusiness development, farm and enterprise and family development, soil and water development, conservation exercises, coastal management, genetic and biodiversity, climate change mitigation and management strategies, and disaster management and damage and loss mitigation. With respect to that, part of the, just to add a little more information, part of it is that this research unit, the TARI Institute, is also looking to incorporate our existing plants or agricultural stations to assist with our research effort in terms of determining what are the areas of emphasis and how we plan to roll it out into the community and how we can gather the information that will also help to direct our policy decisions.
I'm impressed on the amount of objectives, that we have to be looking at, and it's impressive. Have you all been working with the Agricultural Department of the University of the West Indies also to have some sort of input?
Through you, Chair, we have had collaboration with a number of institutes in terms of building out the capacity for the TARI, and the units that we have looked at are Cardi, Kariri, University of the West Indies, UTT, USC, and even the University of Grenada, in terms of us building out the program, the concept, and how we can implement and roll out the TARI Institute.
Nice. So that's excellent, because then it wouldn't be duplicated work and you could get out resources that exist. And could you tell me what is the proposed date for the operationalization of the institute?
Well, we are hoping to have within the first phases, because the nature of the program requires us to do some infrastructure work at the Kendall Farm School as the first start to the program. And we are looking in this upcoming fiscal 2023 to 2024 to at least start the infrastructural works on the facility, while we try collectively to deal with the softer issues in terms of coordinating the program itself, in terms of what research we want to do and how we're going to roll it out. So we have infrastructural work to do, plus the softer issue of developing the program, so to speak, in the different areas.
So what I'm hearing is there will be some time to implement this, probably later on 2024, even with the mega farms. So I guess we would have to wait to judge the success in these endeavors further down the line, probably next 2 years. At this stage, Member Esmond Ford would like to pose some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, we have been getting some information. I would like to go to the youth in agriculture. All right. In your presentation, one second, let me bring it up. Yes, in your submission, stated that, and I quote, the Youth Apprenticeship Program in Agriculture, YAPA, came to an end in 2018. However, the division intends to achieve similar youth agricultural homestead program outcomes. That is, agricultural persons training to equip young people to become successful agribusiness entrepreneurs through the Mega Farm Initiative. And this is at question 8A, page 14 of your presentation. All right, and I would like to ask, how will YAPA outcomes be facilitated through the Mega Farms Initiative? That's the first question I'd like to get an answer for, please. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to get an answer for that first question. How will the YAHP outcomes be facilitated through the Mega Farms Initiative?
Sure, would one like to answer those questions?
Yes, Chair, through you, I would like to respond. Because the Mega Farm Initiative takes into consideration that currently we have an aging agricultural population that is basically part-time, and we have the youths who are graduating out of secondary school, because we have initiatives at the primary and the secondary level. We even recently, a couple of years ago, offered the diploma program in agriculture in Tobago to try and encourage youths into the agricultural sector. And through the Mega Farm Initiative, we have recognized that we have to put aside a number of the sites that we have earmarked for the project for the use in agriculture. So while the training could be consistent for a young budding agriculturist into the sector, at the end of the day, and it was indicated before, there must be some area that they can practice the agriculture and try to realize some level of income. So in the mega farm system, because we have poultry, and poultry has already started in terms of the schools, where we have an initiative through TACO to introduce poultry rearing into the sector. Through the secondary schools, we now have persons who may have an inclination, some measure of training, and a willingness and desire to get into their own entrepreneurial activity. So we have identified on the mega farms that we will have to put aside a number of the units for the young persons who are willing to get into agriculture.
Okay, thank you. Again, Mr. Chair, with regards to this same program, you said it was stopped in 2018. From 2018 to present, have you already started any new programs with regards to youth involvement in this same YAPA?
Yes, if I could respond, Chair. Well, YAPA was a national program which was also suspended in Trinidad at the time. Tobago took the initiative to continue it a few years later, but at the end of the day, because of funding and so, we had to stop that actual program. But what we have done through the Kendall Farm School, we have continued to train pockets of farmers, including the youth, who are interested in agriculture, in continuing the process and trying to build out a capacity in terms of our farmers based in Tobago. So while, and through that, we have to remember through that period also, we were in a lockdown situation. And that kind of also stymied some of the development that would have taken place during that period. So now that we are coming out of the recent lockdown, we are now trying to build back out some of these initiatives. So there would have been a lull during that period, but now that we are focusing on the mega farms and we have the areas assigned for the youth in agriculture, we want to have to ensure that we have a transition and we continue to build the capacity of farmers. We have farmers that would range throughout the age group to have a continuity in the farming community in Tobago.
All right, so therefore, the next question is, the THA has put budgetary allocations in place in order to ensure that some form of agricultural program will continue in Tobago.
Yes, definitely, member, through the chair, definitely. The THA has never stopped having a focus on agriculture. And if I could just add with regard to the period you mentioned, after the YAPA was stopped, and in particular during COVID, we would have embarked on a number of seedling distributions, and we saw that our home gardening initiatives would have grown, and we were able to create a WhatsApp group of those new home gardeners where we continue to engage and interact with them.
Again,
young persons have subscribed to that.
Sure. Again, I'm appreciative of the feedback, but remember the particular title here is the youth involvement in going forward, right? I know my colleague, Minister Webster Roy, would have mentioned with regards to her father being a farmer, and we have more. The idea of having the youth program being continued is definitely a plus in going forward, right, to the panel out there. And I would really look forward to ensure that you don't take away from the budgetary allocation, because sometimes this is where, for all the years we have been hearing about diversification and we need to get involved in more agriculture. I think now is really a good time to ensure that you all continue these programs and ensure that we have the youth, right? We ensure that we have the youth involved in going forward to ensure continuity and ensure that, again, the agricultural sector in Tobago will be maintained. And then, well, a slight correction, it's Ayana Webster Roy, father-in-law, not her father, right? So again, if you can just give a little feedback on that to ensure that there will be continuity guaranteed by your division to ensure that the youth will continue to be involved in agriculture. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hislop, you have some questions you'd like to pose?
Thank you, Chairman. If you may permit me, I just want to jump back to the mega farms because I want to get some clarity on it. And I have a couple of other questions emanating from the discussion earlier this morning. The question as it relates to the mega farms, I know it was mentioned by one of the officials that the concept is to identify areas and to site farmers and divide them into smaller holdings. And this makes up part of the submission coming from the division. But the question I have is, how does this mega farm initiative that is being that the division is seeking to do, how does this relate to the farmland development that was already conceptualized? The lands were identified and the lands were distributed to farmers. If my memory serves me correctly, the only thing that remains to be done on those land holdings is the development of the lands in terms of the infrastructure being installed at these locations. So the question is, how does this mega farm initiative that is being sought now, how does it relate to the farmlands that were already distributed, identified, distributed to farmers?
Chair, before we answer the question, may I have 1 minute, please? We were just contacted by protocol and asked to switch the flags. May we have 1 minute to do so, please?
Sure, you may. Okay. At this, no, I think Member Sugam wanted to say that. Okay, all right. Okay, I would, as we give you that time, I would just want to just venture a bit into tourism aspect, and then we will come back to this. Yeah, I think Member Sagam Singh Suklal also had a question. I don't know if it's relation to
Hi, thank you, Chair.
Sure.
Yes, Chair, it was actually concerning the same issue of the youth in agriculture. I know Member Ford would have articulated some of those questions already, but through you, Chair, I'm still on page 7 of their submissions as it relates, the division submissions, as it relates, of course, to the youth in agriculture and their involvement. You know, the question that I have is just relative to whether or not to date. Now, I know I jumped in late in the meeting, Chair. Of course, I apologize again for that because I had some technical difficulties on my end. So I'm not sure if that issue was already addressed. But I jumped in at a point where I heard a member from the division talking about the Kendall Farm Schools. And then I went back to the submissions, and to my understanding, we are still at the division is still at the stage where it's building out its agricultural program through this Kendall Farm School, correct? I just want to make, before I ask the question, I just want to make sure that that is the current position, that Kendall Farm School is basically going to lead the charge on developing this agricultural program for the youths in agriculture on the island. And that program, that program is currently being built out. That is my understanding. Is that indeed the position? Yes?
Through you, Chair, to answer the members' observation. What is happening is that Kendall Farm School is one aspect of the building out of the program. A management a management team is who will be responsible for identifying, well, so far we would have identified certain aspects that we'll be focusing there on, but the building out of the institution and its operations and its framework will be done by a management.
Okay, now, so, but the point, the fact remains is that you're still in the process of developing that program, correct?
Correct, that is correct, Chair.
Right. Now, why I'm asking that is because, I have seen, okay, so yes, I respect that there is a division that is responsible and charged with the responsibility of, the development of food security and all of that on the island and all of these programs. But have you all at all considered, especially since you're in your embryonic stages in developing this youth and agriculture program, have you at all considered collaboration, for example, with, let's say, the Ministry of Youth Development and other central government ministries that have already built out programs? Because I'm thinking from a resource base, that is, of course, going to assist you considerably, because instead of reinventing the wheel, yes, I know Tobago is going to have circumstances that is peculiar to the island. And of course, whatever program you're creating, maybe a program you would want definitely to ensure that your program is particularly geared towards your youth, the youths on the island, the issues that the youths on the island faces. Yes, so I understand there'll be particular issues that you may need to fine tune a program for, right? But I want to know if, since you're still in the stage of building out this youth and agriculture program, have you all at all considered collaboration? Because, so for example, the Ministry of Youth Development, we already have launched, to my mind, I recall there's a Shade House program. Then the Ministry of Youth and Agriculture also did a program with, there's a program called the Youth Agro Fast Track Program, which is a collaboration between youth development and agriculture. And then there is also the Youth Agricultural Homestead Program and a list of other programs that is geared towards young people, attracting young people back to the farms as a source of income generation and all of that. These programs, to my mind, have a lot of benefit to it. I understand from my readings as well. Well, of course, it's Trinidad and Tobago. So once there's a central government program, of course, all of these programs are geared towards even attracting youths from Tobago to get involved, all right? But I am suggesting, Chair, through you, of course, in the interest of resources, in the interest of time, and more so in the interest of the young people in Tobago, that respectfully through you, Chair, perhaps you all may want to consider the collaboration, stronger collaboration with ministries such as the Ministry of Youth Development that already have launched these programs and that have made a significant amount of inroad. I recall seeing on social media pages that the Minister of Youth Development was with the Chief Secretary on several occasions on the island for launching of different youth-geared programs. And I think you all are the perfect space and place where you're now developing your youth program. Well, you're fine-tuning or you're developing your youth program. And I want to suggest that respectfully, through you, Chair, again, that you may want to consider that collaboration because it helps you to not have to reinvent the wheel. Yes, I understand that there may be particular things you may need to fine-tune to suit the youths on the island, but in the interest of time, in the interest of resources, and more so in the interest of those young people that we want to help and bring to the farms and give them an opportunity to make a living, through agriculture, I want to respectfully suggest that perhaps your management team who is working with the Kendall farmhouse, that they consider this kind of collaborative effort. Because of course, let's be real, we are stronger together. We work, you all work with, these ministries, and I'm sure you'll be able to, there will be benefits from that. So that is just my 2 pence, Chair, that I want to.
Yeah. Thank you, Member. And that's the same direction I was pushing a bit in terms of even the research. If they tap into the university and other institutions, so they wouldn't reinvent the wheel, and in terms of revenue, timing, and whatnot. So, your observation, I think it's worthwhile, and I think we also have to go back to Mr. Hislop's question. I think we had given them time, and then you can put in the fact that member Sagram Singh's you know, what she mentioned, if you are in fact also utilizing the homestead program of Ministry of Youth. Yeah.
Chair, through you with the members, the last member's observations definitely weren't 2 pence. We really appreciate the passion that she has for young people. That's quite evident. And that is a shared passion in Tobago. We already have collaborations. In fact, she mentioned the Shade House initiative. The division has collaborated with the FAO, and we currently have a shade house at the Kendall Farm School, a demonstration shade house, where we intend to engage the Roxborough Youth Club to actually interact with the initiative and be able to be trained and be exposed to the education in that regard. Further collaborations will be elaborated on by Ms. Shaw, and then we would get into the mega farm question in terms of the status of the lands that were distributed to farmers.
Through you, Chair, the Youth in Agriculture program that we are rolling out speaks to the fact that, as admin had mentioned, we do utilize and collaborate with a lot of the programs that are done through Trinidad. As a division within the THA and part of the government service, we do have those primary linkages so that we benefit from a number of initiatives that Trinidad has, so that the number of issues that we raise here in terms of the shade in youth and agriculture, we have some specific initiatives taken through 4-H, which is a national program where we have done specific things in terms of initiatives through the TH, and a particular what we want to identify is what we're doing with TADCO, with the 4-H clubs. We have started a program with the poultry, because if you notice, we speak poultry a lot because that is one of the focus that we have now. We think we have a comparative advantage in terms of the poultry on the island. As mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of statistics coming in that it is a captive market in Tobago. We do import quite a bit of birds on a monthly basis. And therefore, we want to encourage at all levels participation. So through 4-H, we have been building that capacity. We have distributed birds to the schools already, both at primary and secondary levels, to encourage persons into that activity. So we are building out our capacity to increase or attract youths into agriculture in Tobago. If I could move on to the mega farm situation, in terms of the distribution of the farmlands that took place earlier, we have to be mindful sometimes of the segregation of responsibilities within the THA. And land management is really responsible for those distribution and allocation of lands to farmers. So we cannot really speak too much about where they are in terms of the status of that. But from the division perspective, we have focused on the mega farm issue. In fact, the mega farms lands would be utilized, but lands that are currently under the division's portfolio. So we could only, to a certain extent, with accuracy, speak to the mega farms situation, because those are things that we are doing internally in terms of managing what we are doing. Currently now, we have looking at sites. We are trying to incorporate the situation where we can survey out the plots to the various holdings that we would have, And of course, the segregation of different activities in terms of any cross-contamination and quality management issues with farms and their location. And after we finish that, then we would look at the allocation of the farms to prospective holders, as we want to put it in a proper term, prospective holders of these holdings. So in terms of the mega farms, we could expand on that, but in terms of the previous distribution, that would rest now with the Office of the Chief Secretary.
Chairman, if I'm allowed to just follow up.
Sure.
Right. So I fully understand that the land distribution initially was under the Office of the Chief Secretary in terms of the state lands. But the reason I'm asking the question is it seems as if we may be duplicating work. And I understand that the division has lands that are under its purview. But if these lands that were initially given, that were initially distributed, were distributed to farmers, and I understand it will be significant holdings, could there not be some level of collaboration between the Division of Agriculture and the Office of the Chief Secretary, the Land Management Unit, to also make sure that these lands are developed in such a way that farmers who were given these lands could get access, or some sort of work could start so that these farmers could get access to these lands instead of, or in addition to, additional lands being sought for the mega farm projects. Because if I am to understand how the mega farms are going to be set out, it is not that you are seeking to have one farmer or one entity farm significant acreage of land. You're gonna set aside acreage that is then divided for farmers to have access to. And so I'm just asking if there couldn't be a collaboration between the Land Management Unit, which falls under the Office of the Chief Secretary, and the Division of Agriculture, so as to we already have farmers who have lands that have been allocated to them who have not yet been able to use those lands because the development has not been done. And we are now seeking to do another quote-unquote development to give out to farmers again. So that's one. And the other thing, Mr. Chair, if I'm allowed, I just want to piggyback on the poultry issue and to ask if it could be given in a broad framework. You don't have to go into the details, but a broad framework as to what is the contractual arrangement for the poultry farm, right? So that if TADCO, the division, gives me 200 or 2,000 birds, and let's say 1,000 of those birds die, how do we then factor in that, and what is the financial benefit to the farmer when it comes to the poultry farming, to the contractual arrangement?
So you Chair, to answer the members' first question and comments as stated, ideally, before land is distributed, infrastructural work should be at least started. Unfortunately, that was not necessarily the case in these areas. However, the division would have committed to handle or continue the infrastructural development of those areas that were already issued. That being said, already we would have dealt with the water and electricity in terms of the utilities under the holdings that have been activated. And these would be in the tune of $8 million already spent towards water and electricity. when you speak about that as an alternative to the mega farms, what we would have done through the Department of Agriculture would have been to look at the situation with the mega farms in Trinidad and recognize that a different approach will be needed in Tobago. Hence the restructuring of the mega farm situation to include smaller holdings of farmers on the enterprise to realize to realize more success in the program. Yes. Does that answer your question, member?
So, well, Chairman, I'm really heartened by, and I fully agree with the holdings being cut up so that you don't have maybe one entity or one farmer being fully responsible for 10 and 15 acres. So it gives more farmers the opportunity to partake in the process. I was just wondering, as it relates to the holdings that were already distributed, if we couldn't have dealt with that, bring that to a level of production, sorry, and then or in co with that, we also treat with the mega farms. But I appreciate the fact that there's been significant work done on those holdings, and I'm hoping that within short order, the farmers who would have already received those parcels of land could then move into those parcels to have work, to have production started. And the second question had to do with the contractual arrangements with the poultry.
Yeah, so through the chair, thank you for the question, Mr. Isla. Just for everyone's edification, what is happening with the poultry contract farming? This is aimed at definitely assisting the farmers by building capacity. And as to how do we do that? TADCO provides the inputs, which is the chick and the feed. We assist the poultry farmer in not them putting out an upfront cost initially. You had mentioned if 1,000 birds had died, what is the contractual arrangement? Just to give some insight in terms of numbers. If you were to do 1,000 chickens, the average person would pay at least $13 to $15 per bird. That's about 70 bags of feed. That's a further $21,000. That farmer in the Tobago space may not have that initial capital. So we at TADCO are definitely assisting them by putting that input in and also providing the veterinary service and also some veterinary medication in terms of assisting them. What we are doing as well is that when the chick reach a certain age, we are there supporting them. We are coming back at them now in terms of providing the marketing aspect of it, in terms of providing the space where we take it back, provide them a fee, of course, per pound. And if the chicken died due to, there are several cases where 1,000 chickens could die. It could be poor maintenance of the space. It could be they're not changing the pen litter on time. The electricity issues, water. There are so many issues, but they will be dealt by a case-by-case basis where we're not really impacting the farmer, but they definitely would have some cost somewhere. But it's a case-by-case basis going forward. And the contractual so far, we have 37 tranches. We're into 38, so it's a 6 weeks period. So the contract will go up to that period.
If I could add,
sorry.
If I could just add to the basic concept of the project itself, as it relates to the space in Tobago, the agricultural space, farming inputs are pretty staggering for a small farmer or the kind of farmers we have in Tobago. We don't have any large farmers who can absorb that cost. So providing the inputs and part of the maintenance challenges, we hoping to develop a sector or basically a cluster of poultry farmers in Tobago. And over the period of time, we expect the project to mature to the point that where we provide markets, the farmers can now go out on their own and find their own markets. that the capital that is going to be required, because some of the infrastructure will be there, the operating costs now they can bear for themselves, so that they can now get their birds and rear their birds on their own and provide them for the market. And being in clusters, they now have the capacity, if they belong into associations now, to do their own bulk buying, which TATCO really does now, to provide to the farmers and below their own capacity into the sector. So after a period of time, the support that TATCO is adding to the project will now be reduced over a period of time, and we have a resilient, viable poultry industry. So that is basically the end game in terms of that poultry initiative. Thank you.
Chairman, just a couple more follow-ups on this particular issue. I'm still involved to some extent in the poultry industry. So I'm asking from a position of a little intimate knowledge. Is it that farmers could end up owing TATCO if they have losses to the extent that they are unable to recoup that input cost that TATCO would have initially put out? And I know you have on your on the submission that the mortality rate is 9.5% so far. But I have reports, Chairman, that there is significant losses among some farmers with regards to the contractual with the contract farming. And based on what Mr. Alfred has shared with us, is it that due diligence is not being done effectively why we have losses from farmers? Because you made mention of electricity issues. I know current may go and so on, and you may have young chicks that could create a situation. But do you have regular veterinary visits to these farms on a scheduled manner so that farmers are not left in the dark?
Yes, so currently, in terms of the last part that you answered, yes, we do have support. We do have the assistance of some veterinary officers attached to the division, which they will go to various farms should we suspect that they have been a high mortality. They have, from the reports that we have, we will have cases where persons didn't protect the northern side of the pen, so rain came in and washed them away. We have areas where persons had issues with terms of their animals. We have issues where persons didn't feed them on time. We have had issues as relates to persons have been running on generators and they run out of gas. So it's a case by case, but as it relates to the great losses that you are mentioning there, all of our losses are treated very seriously. A report is developed, and we definitely have conversations with the farmer from the veterinary service as well. Yes, and it's also part of building support and understanding where the farmers are in Tobago. You mentioned as well about persons may owe in TATCO. There's a possibility where yes, persons may have to owe TATCO as relates to thing. But what we do is take them on a case by case basis, understand where they went wrong, and work with them in terms of getting some of these capacity going and also reducing their debt as well.
So is it more, as you mentioned, rain coming in and one side they're not building their pens properly? Is it more disease? I mean, on the average, what if you have to look at and say, look, this is responsible for most of the failures of farmers, what do you think it is? Disease, animals, infrastructural problems, or what?
Of both his disease and also a combination of physical infrastructure as well. What we are doing is we would have liaised with ADB in terms of assisting the farmers, where we provide the same contracts and the ADB have a conversation with us. We have all the modules with ADB in terms of assisting the farmers and getting them necessary funding to extend the farm and to do to repair the fence and do all of the work that is required as well. So we have that relationship with ADB as well. Currently, we do have some farmers who are seeking funding through ADB, and we are there all the way with them, assisting them in terms of getting the support and the funding needed to expand from persons who are doing 100, they are now expanding into 500. Those who are doing 500 are now expanding to 1,000 and vice versa, and going down the way.
And if I may interject here, please, Chair, to add to that, the division supports the Tobago initiative through its training modules at the Kendall Farm School. So we have offered training in poultry production as well as housing management, which we recognize through our years of working with the farmers. They might have been needed a little bolstering in. So therefore, from time to time, we offer that type of training to the farmers. That is why we encourage persons to partake of the offerings from the Kendall Farm School. And the school is currently in the process of recalibrating its efforts in terms of just not having it at the farm school, but also opening training virtually, as well as taking it to the community level.
So Chairman, just quickly, I am all for to benefit farmers, but I'm a little challenged by some of the issues that I'm hearing coming out as it relates to why farmers are losing birds. Because the question I have to ask is how do I, as a farmer, enter into a contractual arrangement with TATCO for the poultry contractual system? Because if I have a farm that is not fully up to mark structured, am I still allowed to be part of it? Because if we have a situation where I'm under obligation to TATCO, I have birds from TATCO, my farm is running on generator and I run out of gas, are investigations done by TATCO before they enter into arrangements with farmers with regards to this project?
Yeah, so what is happening when someone, let's say yourself, wants to enter into a contract? You will come and have a conversation with us. We will come and do a site at your location. We will identify as to how many chickens that you could do. We will also give recommendations as it relates to infrastructure work, what you need to put in place and that type of stuff. What is happening as well? You mentioned the case of gas running out. That is something that we have been worked out. That person have now invested into solar power stuff. They are doing different works in terms of assisting them and growing capacity as well. So nobody is left behind. We are working with the farmers. I mean, contrary to what has been said, we are working directly with the farmers in terms of assisting them and in terms of building out their capacity.
And Chair, if I could just add to that, we have to bear in mind that the project is still in its pilot stages. We have a burgeoning or a small agricultural sector. And therefore, the plans that we have now to start the project will not be at the level of best practices. And we have to take the time to build out the program. So it will take a while. Nothing in agriculture happens overnight. It takes a while to build out the system. We have some basic criteria that the farmers must meet in terms of being involved in the program. But we would like to work with farmers where they are and build them up to the capacity and the level that we want to get them at. And that will take some time. If we don't, where will we start? We need to start at some point in time. Yes, there will be issues coming along with people's ability and their husbandry capabilities, how they rear the birds. And I mean, as any individual, I mean, you can be trained and you can be told to do a number of things, but sometimes the uptake is also, we have some resistance sometimes to the uptake of training that we issue out to our farmers and our stakeholders. And all of that is wrapped up into the project. So we have started at some point. We must start somewhere. We have to build the capacity, whether it's the infrastructure, whether it's the training of the capacity of the farmers. We know that capital is an issue, so we came in and tried to deal with that at a clean-cut area, and we have provided the markets on the other end. So we're in a win-win situation. So the issues of quality management on the farm is going to be worked out as time goes on. As Mr. Ricardo Alfred indicated, we are supporting the sector. The sector cannot stand on its own. So in supporting the sector, if we have to incur some debt to carry the sector forward, that is part of what we consider our development. So yes, there are issues. We expect there will be issues, but we'll work them out in time, and we'll get to a place where we are able to build a resilient poultry sector.
Well, what I'm hearing is that, and as Senator Hislop did put the point is, if TADCO is involved in probably assisting, funding, looking at the farm situation, is it that they do not go and do adequate checks and there is a deficiency or gap there? Because remember, if you're putting out money in these endeavors, we would hope somehow the poultry would come back into the community, would somehow be there, not just farmers having losses. The losses to the farmers would be losses to the taxpayers who would have actually channeled money to assist these farmers. So is there a gap in that the individuals going in and looking at these farms to say, hey, there's an infrastructure problem, there's a problem that, a potential problem to exist. So is there something there you may need to improve on?
Currently, what we have existing is a collaboration between TADCO and the division, and by extension, it's veterinary service. So there's checks on all of the farms. We go there from time to time to ensure that what we are doing and what they are doing is in line with the gap, with the good agricultural practice, because traceability is very crucial to us. So we are currently monitoring all of the farms.
So whose portfolio will it fall under? Because if we are going to make some sort of, afterwards we're going to give our recommendations, we may want to put in the who would be under the responsibility of looking at these farmers to ensure that there are no losses and failures. And so give me a clear-cut idea.
Chair, may I respond to that? We have one division of which TADCO is part of the division. So the responsibility of that, ensuring that we have collaboration between the production plants, the support systems in terms of monitoring and providing technical assistance and identifying issues with the poultry farmers on their farms is also part and parcel of the responsibility of the division. We have applied our veterinary services to the project, and I'm trying to remind the committee that it is also a pilot project, and the nature of the program is also new. Farmers now are in a position now where, hey, I'm at a point now where I have the support that I need to build out my poultry farm. I would have to improve my physical structure, my infrastructure. We have made arrangements with ADB to provide some level of credit for them to do that. We are training them in how to rear the birds. We are trying to ensure that we have enough monitoring and surveillance on the farms to avoid the mortality rate. And I think if we look at the sector and the industry standards, I think the mortality rate is normally considered around 6%. And if we are at 9%, we are not doing too bad as a pilot project. So yes, we may have certain instances where one farmer may experience a severe loss based on maybe one physical factor of rain coming in or animals getting away and damaging the chicks. I mean, these are personal things to the farmer, which they have to improve. There's so much that as an entity, such as an institution as us, that we can do in terms of the rearing of the birds, of building out the sector. There is some level of responsibility that rests with the farmer themselves. And I guess it's a learning curve for everyone. So as I said before, it is a pilot project. We're hoping that we should be point that we build a resilient poultry sector, and we are reducing the risk in the involvement. I think that is a major problem for farmers, the level of risk that is associated with your ventures. We have come in and dealt with that risk. So we are hoping that the project proceeds or is successful, and that we do build a resilient poultry sector in Tobago. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess we'll be looking in the future to see if it has been a success and if you had put things in place to mitigate against loss. Your submission stated that at present, no farmers in Tobago are utilizing the NAMDEFCO packing house to do exports. What are the reasons for farmers underutilizing the NAMDEFCO packing house?
Yes, well, now the first packing house is located in Trinidad. I don't know if the question is related to the packing house that we have at Shore Park. I don't know if there's a mix up there. Are we? Oh, yes. Yeah. So as it is now, we have looked at the ability of farmers to have compliance to the market standards and the quality management standards that are required in the marketplace. Our customer base and our population has gotten quite savvy at determining what they consider to be quality in terms of the food. Is no longer, I mean, price is a factor, but people are more health conscious and require a certain level of quality management in the rearing of the food that, or the producing of the food that we eat. In the past, while we had some issues of export, we used to have farmers in transit having stuff packed at NAMDEFCO to go onward to the export facility. And one of these was when we were operating with the pepper project some years ago. The division now has sought to develop its own packing house facility in Tobago, and we have developed a facility at Shore Park to aid in assisting farmers in their level of compliance to the quality standards that are required for the market, and not just locally, but for the export market, which is more stringent. So the packing house in Tobago is the area of focus now that we have in terms of the division.
Thank you. So at this stage, I would like to go on to the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. I think Mr. Suresh Duke have been very quiet. I think you're waiting for our questions. Mr. Ford, I think you had, Senator Ford, a question. Member Ford, you had a question I think you wanted to pose, or a few questions. Could you proceed? Yes. Yeah, no, okay. So let me start with the questioning until Member Ford would be back. I would like to start out here that in terms of the tourism sector, now we are hearing that we are now moving to agriculture being number one. So in terms of the tourism sector, what is it in terms of training? I had gotten some information in the past where the hotel school actually was underutilized in terms of, you are looking for people to train and you had to depend on persons from Trinidad coming in. Do you have any idea about the hotel school? Is that trust there? You still having people being trained for the hotel industry?
Thank you, Chair. Can I pass this on to Ms. Edwards, please?
Sure.
Thank you so much for the question, panel. The Tobago Hospitality and Tourism Institute falls under the Division of Education. And so there is no direct involvement of TTAL in that arrangement. What I can say is that what we do at TTAL in terms of collaboration with the Institute is that we do support their students through internship. We do provide opportunities for their graduates to participate in our various programs and activities, and we continue to work with them on the customer service program. But from a more global place, I think the whole question of human resource development and capacity in tourism is not limited to the Hospitality Institute, because the Hospitality Institute really provides training in direct actions. Hospitality management, culinary tourism management, those are the more obvious arrangements. The tourism sector is one where every discipline becomes involved eventually. So mechanics, AC people, accountants, digital people, graphic design people, all of those skills are part of the training that is needed to fully develop the sector. I don't know if I would have answered that question, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for that. You have did. According to your submission, the quality of Tobago's room stock did not match the airlines of Virgin Atlantic 4- and 5-star standards. Has Tobago sought to improve the categorization of the room stock?
Thank you so much for that question. So in relation to Virgin Airline operates in conjunction with their holiday arm, which is Virgin Holidays. And Virgin Holidays' business model is one where they cater to a high-earning clientele, and those clients prefer rooms that are 4- and 5-star. You would know in Tobago that for a long time, very little investment in terms of new hotel properties have been completed. Some that are started have come into roadblocks in terms of approvals at the level of the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Finance and Customs and Excise and planning and permissions and so on. But in general, the level of investment in upgrades and so has been very low. And so Tobago does not have, still at this point in time, the number of 4- and 5-star rooms that Virgin may require. But that does not say that there is not an opportunity for us to use the existing stock of rooms that we have to grow the product in a different direction. In the last year or so, the agency has been entertaining, as part of its marketing thrust, a number of what we call product managers. And these are persons from various tour operators who come to the destination to ascertain and test the quality of the rooms and the other products on the island. Because how it works is that before, in terms of sending people, most of the tour operators contract directly with a hotel, they contract directly with a tour operator, and so the agency acts as facilitator for that process. When they do come, and the feedback we get is that the room stock is adequate in the most part. In some instances where there are improvements, it may be logistic things, service things, etc. But that feedback is passed back to the property, and we continue to work with what we have. From a more global place, though, there really is the need at a national level to determine whether or not it's not time for a dedicated tourism investment fund, on the one hand. And on the second hand, if the current pairing that we have of national responsibility aligns with growing the tourism sector. So, for example, in some other islands, tourism is partnered with investment as one ministry to prevent some of the roadblocks and hiccups and hurdles when you go from one sector to the other. In other areas, tourism is paired with transportation or with trade. So there are a whole host of global, really global issues that I would be happy to expand on if I'm asked.
So at this stage, I'm happy that what you have mentioned, that at least we have that some input from persons coming in and looking at what we have available, and it seems to be adequate. But then there's still a need for 5-star hotels to exist. And have you been making some sort of a venture towards this, the new hotels and the new hotel garden? I remember once we had talk about Sandals coming in. Is it that if that had come in, we would have been in a better place?
Okay, thank you for that question. The responsibility for trade and investment does not fall within TTAL. I think I alluded to that in terms of the structural mismatch, because so trade and investment sits with the division of finance, trade, and some of it is under the Chief Secretary's office. From where we sit, we have no say, or we have no real input in managing or attracting foreign direct investment to the hospitality sector. That's not part of our mandate at TTAL. But when people do come in and they show interest, we facilitate them in whatever way we can in terms of information. Some people want to get like numbers and projections and so on. We facilitate that. Sometimes we are asked to comment on environmental certificates of clearance for new developments, etc. But a lot of it falls outside of our hands. For example, there's a particular project that's going on in Tobago now, and some of the approvals have been stuck somewhere between the Ministry of Trade and Custom and Excise and the planning people for more than a year. And so the process is very slow. And I think that it really speaks to the need for more coordination and appreciation for the special needs of the tourism sector in ministries and divisions and areas that may not think of their core work as being tourism related.
I thank you for that. So at least, sometimes part of our recommendation may be to expedite certain things like this. So this would be coming out of this. I think Member Ford had some questions he would like to pose.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tell me something. Tobago Jazz Festival. How long Tobago has been hosting this festival?
Yeah. Good morning, panel. Thanks for the question, Mr. Ford. The festival started in 2005, but I think, well, I can give a more broader thing on that, but it started in 2005. First as the Tobago International Gourmet Jazz Festival in the first year, and then it turned to the Plymouth Jazz Festival for 3 years after that with CL Financial, and then it morphed into the Tobago Jazz Experience, which continues to date. So that's the history.
So tell me something, you all have a template you all work with. It's something that happens, it's annually, it goes, right? Annually?
If we have a template, what, not too sure the entire question.
Yeah, a template, a draft that you all will work with. Yes, we know it can be tweaked every time you all are hosting it, but you all have a basic.
So I think, yeah, so I think, you're right. So what has happened is that as you happen, persons who would have managed the festival at different times. I happen to have been there from inception 2005 to probably 2015 or 2016. And then I moved to Shopper Complex. But I think what's important is that in 2017, there was a study done by Dr. Keith Nurse on behalf of the Tobago House of Assembly that looked at how the festival can be improved, how it can be looked at. That document is one that's available. It is actually called an Evaluation Strategy Task Force report. And that was a committee chaired by Dr. Keith Nurse. Following that, in 2018, there was another study done, which was a cost-benefit assessment. And this was done by Kyrie Consultants with Dr. Ralph Henry. So those two reports actually speak a lot as to the benefits and the structure of the festival and what were the areas that were needed to be improved on, right? And it identified some very, very key points. One, it identified the fact that the Jazz Experience was an institutionalized festival, meaning that they saw it as one that fitted the same category as some of the other major festivals in the Caribbean. And two, they looked at the fact that we did have a problem on the sea bridge, and we did have problems on the air bridge, and we also had a problem in terms of having the right artists because you were using smaller budgets. And so the whole thing about branding and strategically moving it, but in terms of seeing the festival as something that can give benefit, they all agreed that there was a need to do that. And lastly, I think there was even one recommendation from Kyrie that maybe the name could have been changed in their recommendation to the Soca and Carry Jazz Festival. But all those happened just before the 2019 recommendations came, just before the COVID pandemic.
Right. So again, thanks for that information. So therefore, we are going into basically 20 years of jazz, some sort of jazz in the Tobago area. Now, you spoke about the various studies that were done and the improvement that were needed. But I noticed from your submission, only B-Mobile and Carib responded with cash contributions. That's at question 2, part 3 on page 4 of the document that would have been provided.
Right, so first,
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Did other corporate entities indicate other types of support in lieu of cash contributions? If yes, what were the options provided to your agency?
Right, beautiful question, and thanks again for that. I was actually involved with the marketing manager in the sponsorship for us. Coming out of COVID, as you know, everybody was balling, but I think we spent some time from November, December, coming up for this particular jazz to really see how we can collaborate and work with sponsors. So first off, that information, I just need to correct it. It wasn't Caribbean Stag, it was actually Caribbean B-Mobile.
Yes, Caribbean B-Mobile.
Yeah. So that was 330 in cash. But however, in kind, we did get about $830,000 worth. And those sponsors would have been several sponsors. We had over 8 to 10 other sponsors that were involved. Sponsors such as OCM, Fire One, Bermudas, Unicoma, etc. So all of these did provide some serious support, and some of those monies did help to buffer and again close some of the gaps in terms of the expenses.
Okay, what was the THA budgetary allocation for the last Tobago Jazz Festival?
The amount was, I think we stated it in the report, 12 million. 12 million. 12 million, I think.
All right. Now, we also noticed that there are some outstanding payments to stakeholders.
Correct.
Again, I don't know if we'd be in a position to identify these stakeholders over the air, or if you'd like to provide it in writing with the names of these stakeholders that are outstanding with payments and the quantities that are due. But could you give me an idea of the total quantity? Because I know
I think Mr. Ford, that's actually in the answers in terms of we have an outstanding about 6.4 million that we have outstanding. But that has been identified because it is to be paid. The division, in collaboration with the Division of Finance, Trade and the Economy, they will address that in terms of having that paid. And we hope that that will be in a short manner. So we did get releases from that 12 million of 3.1, which is stated in our answers there. But we are awaiting the 6.4, which will take care of some of the outstanding payments that we have at this time.
All right. So, and again, you'll provide in writing to the committee the list of stakeholders and the quantities owing.
Oh yeah, if you wish to have that, we can give a list of every single entity and how much we owe them. Yes, we have that. We have that.
Nice. I want to get more local now. How many local workers, the person who was cleaning the compound, the person who was a waitress, a bartender, or whatever the case may be, local Tobago workers that are being owed? What quantity, right? In terms of numbers of persons being owed and in terms of the value of the amount being owed to these individuals. What sort of figures are we looking at?
I don't have the complete list of I don't have in terms of that on my hand right now. but we can give you that in terms of the exact figures, because we have a complete listing of the 6.4. Most of the workers would fall in that category who have to be paid.
But again, in terms of going forward, Tobago Jazz Festival was in April. When was it? March, April month it was? When was Tobago Jazz?
Tobago Jazz was 20th to the 23rd of April. Yeah.
Right, so that's May, June, we're going into July. So that's 3 months. So again, quote unquote, the small man, I think, is looking forward to some sort of payment. And it's going into 3 months. And I would think they would like to know that they will have their payments made as a result of services performed at a particular time and period, as the case may be. So you're gonna, as a entity, as a division, you're going to ensure that takes place pretty soon.
Well, yes, so Mr. Fo, just following the protocol again. So we are a company similar to TTAL under the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation. So we work with a board, and that board, of course, reports to the division. At present, the communication is direct because our board term expired, I think, last month, in May, sorry. We're in July, yeah, so in May. So we are working assiduously with the administrator, and he can tell you that we are constantly in contact to make sure, but we have been assured that those funds will become available to us from the division as they work with the finance ministry to make sure that we get the funds to pay off those bills. So your passion and mine are actually aligned.
All right, last question, Mr. Chairman. Again, what could you attest to be the reason or reasons behind having a 6.4 outstanding debt at this time?
So the best way to answer that is to say that the way we operate, as you know, is we wait on releases to be released to us at the TFCL. I would not be in a position to say why I don't have the money. Well, I think the best person here who can probably answer that would probably.
Can I add in, Mr. Arnold? Oh, thank you. So let me just repeat what Mr. Arnold had said before. The division is working closely with the Division of Finance to source the funds for this $6 million. And we are working extremely hard because we understand the small man needs his payment also. That's always at the forefront of our decision making. Okay, so we are working hard with the Division of Finance to allocate the funds for the 6.4 million.
Right, and just for clarity of myself and the listening public, when you say releases of funds, you're talking from Division of Finance, you're talking about the Division of Finance in the THA.
Yes, Division of Finance, Trade and the Economy at the Tobago House of Assembly.
Right, lovely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Member. I was happy that you brought up the plight of this small man. And I just want to go off track a little bit. There was a court judgment on the April 25th of where Justice Frank C. Prasad actually asked for a probe into the Cocoa Reef sex ring. This was the headlines in Sean Douglas's article in the Newsday. And it was some serious allegations where there were persons in authority in that hotel exploited female workers. And actually it made mention how the wealthy and powerful influential men are objectifying and they have gender discrimination, female exploitation. Did the THE see it fit to put something in place to look at the exploitation of women working in the hotel industry, or is there a special division for that? How with this judgment coming out and making the public, have you put anything in place to educate women where they can go to seek help in case they are being exploited?
Yeah, while the exploitation of any worker in Tobago is not really something we look forward to. I would ask Ms. Edwards if she have any information to share on that, because I really and truly, I have no information on that right now.
Well, it's just that, again, the plight of the small individual, man, woman, whatever, I think according to the judgment, something may have to be put in place. So directions to the staff working, in case of any sort of exploitation, what direction it needs to take. Yeah. Mr.
Thank
Hislop,
you so
I
much
think.
for that question,
yeah.
Mr. Chairman. If we extrapolate your question logically through the population, it would mean that if there is a sexual harassment or any other allegation within the Parliament, within the Ministry of Trade, etc., that organization is supposed to take it upon itself to mete out justice. The TTAL is limited by how far it can go in terms of stakeholders, and that really was a private matter between the owner and the former manager, who seem to have more than a professional relationship going, if we rely on the facts of the case. What I can say is that we have continued to collaborate with COPAREEF. One of the things that didn't come out after is that the organization has moved on. They are in the process of appointing new management. They have reopened, and they are gradually rebuilding their business post-COVID. We have been liaising with them. They have been supporting us and working alongside us in terms of our marketing efforts, attending shows and working along with product managers and so that come to the island. And so we continue to do what we can, but there are limits to the scope and the boundaries of our responsibility and our influence.
Thank you. Member Hislop, I think you had some follow-up questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to follow up on the Tobago Jazz experience. The additional 6.4 million that is being sought or that is outstanding. Just like to find out if that will cover the total expenditure for the 6.4 million plus the, I think it's 3.1, if that will cover the total expenditure for the Tobago Jazz experience. And I also have some challenges, Mr. Chairman, with the timelines with regards to when the budget for Tobago Jazz experience was approved in relation to when the Tobago Jazz experience actually took place. Is it, because it seems like based on the submission, the budget was approved around March 29th. That budget of 12 odd million. And then the jazz experience was hosted on April 20, I think it's the 20th to the 23rd, I think the chairman said. So I just need some clarity on the timeline, if there was spend before the budget was approved, and whether this 6.4 million that is outstanding will cover all of the expenditure for Tobago Jazz experience. I have a couple other questions after that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Through you, Chair, Mr. Hislop. The presentation of budgets to the Executive Council goes way back more than 3 or 4 months before that. However, the final, we had different tweaks to that in terms of revisions of the budget, and also understanding too that we are also in the planning phases. We're still also at that point still negotiating with some of the artists and so on. So by the time March came, yes, we got the final approval as to what the budgetary limits will be. In context of the 6.4, right now on our books, our finance manager, that is what sits, and yes, that will take care of all the outstanding bills at this time, yes. Based on the completion of the exercise of jazz, yes, it will take care of that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on that, when you said the tweaking of contracts with the artists, does this also factor in the international acts, or was this just local acts that we were treating with at that period?
Well, so let me just explain. So even going way back to 2022, all right, in February, we started working on artists in terms of looking at artists that can certainly be attractive to the market for the festival. Because part of the festival strategy is that you want to have the kinds of artists that certainly call tourist center. So people are lured into coming to that festival. So yes, the festival may have its own brand image and brand loyalty, but you want to also have that. So since February, we were working on different artists. The costs were kind of phenomenal for those in the earlies. For example, I will tell you in the earlies, we looked at people as Alicia Keys, we looked at people like Bruno Mars, but the costs were really, really, really kind of over the top. And you know, when you looked at that. So coming down, we kept working on that in terms of the artists. And again, negotiating with artists does take a while because sometimes it's push to and fro and pull and push. And we did finalize with our artists in the first one, I think we got in January, I think. We had completed the first artist, and by the end of February, I think we had engaged the other one.
Okay.
So that's part of the process. Yeah.
So this entire budget that you have, the entire expenditure, also treats with your international artists. So the international artists were already paid as well.
Yes, the international artists are paid already. That 3.1 would have covered most of the artists.
Okay, so what we have outstanding would be to our local artists.
No, we also paid some of the local artists in that 3.1. Yeah, we did.
Okay, excellent.
So you have local, as a matter of fact, to be quite straightforward with you, all the artists, local and foreign, have been paid.
Local and foreign, okay. All local artists have been paid.
All have been paid, yes.
Okay.
So the only people we have now are the other suppliers, the marketing people, and other suppliers in the space. Yes.
Okay, that's excellent, Mr. Arnold.
Yeah.
Just to also follow up on the jazz experience. In your submission, it stated that the question was asked how many persons attended the events. The response was 5,277 patrons attended the 3 jazz events. Gospel night, you had 770 patrons, sorry. Speyside Jazz 2015, International Night 2,429 patrons. Where do our VIP patrons fit into this? And are the VIP patrons also your complimentary tickets?
So you would have 2 levels. One, you would have the invitations, which would be handled by the secretary for the division. So those invitations go through a different pathway to the VIP area. The complimentaries are distributed, of course, to several categories, and that would be the THA complimentaries, have complimentaries to the Jazz Implementation Committee, to the staff of TFCL, to the TFCL board. You will have sponsors will also be part of the complimentary mix. Ticket outlets, we do have arrangements with them based on them being part of our support. And then you have several agencies. We also afford some of that.
Okay, so the figures that we have before us for patrons are paid patrons.
So you have Let's make sure now. So I can give you a breakdown here. So what we have are the figures. 1 second. Right. So what we have, I can give you a breakdown of what we sold. You want what we sold or who attended? Which? So I have a breakdown here.
No, the question I asked is if the breakdown that you submitted to us.
No, the breakdown you have would be inclusive of comps and also sold tickets. It will be a combination.
Okay, so is it possible for you to disaggregate that for us, to give us what you have for complimentary versus what you have?
So what I will give you is I will give you the complete in terms of the breakdown, right? So for example, the complete breakdown you have would be 4,214 tickets. Follow me, doesn't mean everybody came. Complimentary will be 1,890, okay? So breakdown will be, on the international, it's 2,191, all right, that are sold, and we have 680 complimentary. All right, that's the total in terms of 2,871. But remember, not everybody would have come in our arrival figures. And then for space side, we had 1,496 sold, and our complimentary 683, right? And these are all registered. And for gospel, we would have had 527 and 456 for the comps. But it doesn't say that all of these would have arrived, right?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some other questions on tourism, but you can, it may be on another note. So I don't know if you'd allow me or if you could guide according to the chairman.
I would like to allow Ms. Morris Julia to ask a question first, and then we'll come back to you, member.
No problem.
Thank you, Chairman. I thought you forgot me for a while. All right, so Chairman, through you, I am very interested in the strategies for attracting international airlift. And I'll also give a by the way story, Chairman. My children came back from, I think it's IC, Island Crashers weekend, where they had a fabulous time, but apparently they didn't know they had to get a plane ride to come back home. So they waited from 10 in the morning. Don't worry, Chairman, these are adults. At least they say that they're adults. And they finally got a flight 10 o'clock last night. But it made me think about this airlift. And according to your submission, there are many challenges inherent in the strategy to utilize CAL's 25-minute connection between Trinidad and Tobago to connect to Tobago and all the major source markets. That will be question 13, point number 3, page 27. So I have two questions, A and B. What are the challenges identified in employing this strategy? And B, what measures are used to address the challenges identified? And Chairman, after that, I just would like to have a brief discussion on marketing strategies.
Yeah, can I ask?
Yeah, so thank you so much for that question, Ms. Morris Julian. I have lived on Tobago for all of my life, except the 9 or so years that I took tertiary education outside. And the issue of movement for Tobago people between Trinidad and Tobago is a perpetual issue. There was BWI, there was Air Caribbean, there were wet leases, there were a whole host of things. And no permutation, no government intervention has ever been able to solve that problem for us as locals, as residents, for people who need to move essentially, and also for visitors. A big part of our challenge and bottleneck in tourism is that 25-minute hop that is currently monopolized by CAL. I would tell you that I think Caribbean Airline, who is the current holder, they recognize some of the limitations on the route. But what has happened for them, especially post-COVID, is that every route now becomes a business case. So the Tobago route is lined up along all the other opportunities to optimize and make money on different routes. And because the true cost is not passed on through the ticket, and they have a limited fleet and they have their own mandate to become less reliant on subventions, the Tobago route continues not to be prioritized. That's on the one hand. So that's outside of our arrangement. That's with Caribbean Airline, and I think they report to the Ministry of Finance. So that's that difficulty. The second difficulty, specifically from a tourist place, is in terms of the synergy between CAL and the international airlines. One of the challenges that tour operators tell us all the time is that you cannot book a CAL connector through the normal SABA arrangements. The itinerary does not show up. And even when it shows up, there is something called an interline arrangement, which allows different airlines to honor each other's tickets on various legs and to share baggage seamlessly. That has not been sorted out at the level of CAL as yet. So what has happened, not just for us, the current team, but every team managing tourism before has had to contend with limitations that are outside the scope, not just of the agency or the division or the office of the secretary or the chief secretary, but challenges that arise in the national place. I would love, as a Tobagonian, right, to be able to move freely between the islands. I think even today, the fact that we are having a virtual sitting is pointing to the fact that maybe if we had to come down to appear before you physically, there was no guarantee that we would be able to get up, come back up today. And so all we can do, and I think this is a good platform for us to ask the national community and those entities who are responsible for CAL and the inter-island movement to really understand the plight of Tobagonians, not from just a domestic movement place, but the fact of how limiting and frustrating it is to move. Because if I'm a visitor and I can't get a confirmed seat to connect to Tobago, or when I try to get a seat to come back out, I can't, I am definitely going to go to another destination where I can get a confirmed seat. That's on the one hand. In terms of what we have been doing at the agency, we have been trying to build a closer relationship with Caribbean Airlines where it impacts tourism. So we have been doing quite a number of meetings with them for them to understand what is happening. We have had joint discussions with them and our tour operators and reps in the different markets so that they can work through some of the interline arrangement issues on the one level. We have started working more closely with their reps in the different markets in North America, in Barbados, etc., to try to work through some of those issues. But we cannot solve the domestic airlift problem on our own. And we are grateful for this national platform through you, Chair, and the JSC to make a further appeal for Tobago to be treated not as a stepchild, not as an outside woman, but as an equal partner in the movement of Tobago people, not just for pleasure, but for medical reasons, because I'm a stroke survivor. And when I had my stroke, I was on Tobago. And it took 48 hours, right, for me to get a flight, to get an MRI. I almost died. So it's personal to a lot of us. And so we're hoping that we don't continue to play games because we know that CAL says there are seats, and we Tobago people can't find those seats. They seem to be lost in the Bermuda Triangle. So it's a very, very serious and for me, an emotional issue. I don't know if I would have answered your question.
Actually, not quite, but through you, Chairman, you know, outside women really not supposed to have seats, right? So that was an unusual analogy. But what it is I am most curious about, through you, Chairman, to Ms. Edwards, the communication, right? For example, there was an event this weekend. Were you involved in the said events? Was something sent to, let's well, Carl, regarding that we may need extra flights, etc., etc. And I mean, not just for that, I mean, for long weekends, what is the, because I actually was very impressed at the fact that Carl saw a need yesterday. 150 people wanted to go home, wanted to go to Trinidad for various reasons. And Carl put more flights on, right? So that to me is communication. But what I'm interested in and what the committee is interested in, the communication process. What is how do you connect? How do you make the decision? Can you simply say, we're having this event here, or we notice that these promoters are having this event? And I'm also interested to when promotions like that exist, are you all engaged? Are you all informed? Because it's a rite of passage every July, August. For me, because I'm quite old, it would have been the Great Race. All right? I would have been there for every Great Race. And it seems like the name changes every generation. I'm not sure. I'm not sure by the time my 4-year-old goes what it would be called. But I just want to know the process and the communication with the Airlift regarding something like this, and how does it impact on your particular division? And I think that's what I'm interested in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. I think that what I did not clarify, particularly in my previous response, is that what your son would have been experiencing this weekend in terms of not being able to return home is something that Tobago people experience all the time. And so Carl is not unaware of the challenges, because on a regular Friday,
just to interject, that is poor planning on his part. That is nobody else's fault but my son's fault. But I
don't think so. I don't think so, because what happens is that Carl normally puts out seats for Tobago between 30 and 90 days ahead of travel. And for people who have scheduled travel, those seats are booked up. So if you try to get into the system a week before, there is no availability. The difficulty with the Carl system is that even though, some other airlines, when people come on standby, the ticket would automatically fall out of the system and you would see seats on the flight. That doesn't automatically happen with Carl. So a lot of the issues are operational issues around Caribbean Airline and how they operate, and they are outside of our arrangement.
But could you
in terms of the reach out with Carl, there is always constant communication with Carl, either through our entity or through the division. And I know that especially when there are large events, there is that conversation. But the thing, though, is that Carl has its own constraints, as we do. I know that they do the best they can, but this is an issue that existed since the days of BWIA and TITAS and everybody else, and we have not found a national solution to it. Yes.
Okay, so I'm hearing that Carl needs to somehow liaise better with the Tobago House of Assembly. Also, the fact that when there are special events carded, somehow the communication has to go on to the Carl that they may need in advance to put some more flights. So if there's a special event on, the whoever is actually planning those events should have to get that knowledge to Carl, to you, to go via Carl, at least to get some more seats. That's one. The other alarming thing is the fact that you said there's no working MRI in Tobago. Because if I'm a tourist coming in to Tobago and I'm involved in some sort of accident, it would be a bit alarming and frightening. Why would I go to that destination? You see, so because accidents do happen. And so therefore, the fact is, even in cases where, and I'm sorry to hear about your plight, should now Carl now be somehow directed to have a vacant seat for someone who's seeking medical attention to Trinidad? But I remember there was the helicopters, when I worked at Port of Spain Hospital, would have come in and land at the Queen's, the Savannah, and at least patients would have come in Tobago. Is that service still available? I know, because in terms of that now borders on health, but in terms of tourists coming in, may want to know that there is an avenue. There are air ambulance people could pay for if there's an insurance. So give me some clarification about MRI. Someone falls sick, a tourist falls ill, what will happen?
Yeah. So I think that in my first response, I made the point that there is a lot of interconnectivity with this thing that we call tourism. And the visitor experience is impacted by a whole host of things, all of which may not be within the control of the agency. So the supply of water, the steadiness of internet services, the availability of adequate health and emergency response facilities, safe policing, and all of those things are things that are necessary for citizens and visitors, but do not fall directly under the control of the agency. But what I can tell you is that there is a recognition in the Tobago space. I think there's always been that what impacts locals impacts visitors. And I know that since my time, I know that an MRI machine has been sourced, and I don't know the current state of it because thank God I haven't had the need for it in a while. But the thing though is that I think that with the resources that they have, I mean, we know healthcare in the country generally is up and down, but in the last year or so that I've been here, there has not been any serious incident. There have been incidents involving tourists and visitors to the island, and the hospital and the emergency services have been able to manage and treat all of those persons safely. And so I cannot say that we are dissatisfied with the current medical setup.
So you mentioned interrelated factors. Are there any other factors in terms of tourism that you think need to be verbalized in this meeting?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I would have indicated initially the whole question of where is tourism being housed in terms of the national decision-making process and the interconnectivity with trade, industry, investment, and in the CAL situation, transportation. I want to go back to the transportation a little bit because for CAL, it's not just the availability of seats on the flight, it's also the timing of the flights for us. So for example, the last flight out of Port of Spain currently leaves at 8:40 p.m., right? It leaves at it's supposed to leave at 8:40 p.m. out of Piarco. But you have to be checked in and seated in the departure area by about 7:40. Most times they board and they leave when they're full, right? So for people who may be having connections into the destination that land after a certain time, or they may stay long in customs, there is not an expedited Tobago desk. There is not a later flight that they can get. So there is this additional cost of overnighting and not being able always to get to Tobago the next day. So that can add a day or two to the travel. The other interrelated thing is the whole question of immigration and customs and how their documentation process impacts the quality of data that we can collect. Some destinations are able on a real-time basis based on how they manage their immigration data to say how many visitors have come into the island and where they are staying. Because they have not just automated and put online their immigration form, but they have gone through Parliament and they have legislated their government to ask and to mandate airlines to have all passengers fill out that form online between 5 to 7 days before they arrive. So once that form is filled out before the person even boards the plane 7 days before, it gives tourism professionals an opportunity through Google and Power BI and all of those AI tools to actually see in advance where people would be, how long they would be staying, etc., and put mechanisms in place. So that's another area of difficulty for us. The other thing that I have two other points there, if you would allow me. The whole question of understanding the nature and the potential of the tourism sector, because we seem to think that tourism is just a pie-in-the-sky arrangement and it's something that is peculiar to Tobago. And I want to make a very critical point here. Our national population is quite small compared to others. And so visitors are a temporary augmentation to that population. And every visitor that comes to Tobago, right, demands services, goods and services that can be sourced in Trinidad. So when we have jazz festival or we just have regular people coming or we have island crashers, they actually temporarily increase the demand for goods and services for Trinidad manufacturers and distributors. And that adds to the national pie and makes a national contribution. Dubai is the country that has done that best. When they built that mall, the Dubai Mall is the largest mall in the world. And everybody was wondering, why are these people building a mall that could accommodate more people than their population? And that mall has a visitor count of about 300,000 or 400,000 persons per day. That just at one place. That 300,000 or 4,000, 300 and something more thousand persons per day pass through that mall. Most of them are not residents of Dubai, but the tourism impact in terms of having visitors come to your island flows through, and it's a big drive of economic activity if we do it right. The third and the last point that I want to make as allowed is the whole question of financing and subventions. The tourism sector has gotten very competitive, and a lot of other islands have been doing the most in terms of their promotional activities, and maybe because they do not have a fallback position. The subventions that TTAL, I could only speak for TTAL, that TTAL have been receiving have been very inadequate for the work that we do. I just want to talk about this year. So this year, our allocation is 44 million TT dollars. That translates to 6.28 million US dollars, 5.95 million euros, 5.09 English pounds, and 8.57 million Canadian dollars, right? One digital opportunity in any market can cost 750,000 US dollars, right? A full-on, always-on digital campaign, because that's a big part of marketing, can cost 1 million US dollars. So when we put what the relative spend or the relative level is in terms of cost requirements to become visible and competitive in the market, what we are currently investing in tourism and tourism development is nowhere near what is needed to bring us up to speed in the shortest possible time. Thank you for your consideration.
Sure. Member Ford, I think you had a question.
Yeah, all that have been said by the representative from the tourism division, maybe factual, as she rightly may so, but from where she sits, she mentioned all that she has said to us this morning. I wonder how many of it has been passed on to her relevant upline, which I presume is the THA, in order to ensure that what she mentioned to us is being taken care of. For example, the point with regards to Carl and the air bridge and so on. I haven't heard no suggestions. I haven't heard no recommendations. And I would trust that those are some of the things that we could probably get in writing, because I think it would be too late at this time, at this stage, Mr. Chairman, in order for her to verbalize it. So I suggest that if you can put some recommendations, some suggestions that can go to Carl, that can go to the THA, which is probably her upline, and then the THA can then pass it on to the Ministry of Finance of Trinidad and Tobago, so that we can probably all benefit at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that observation, Mr. Ford. I function here as the mouthpiece of tourism stakeholders. One of the things that I've been doing since I came to this chair, my team and I, we have been interacting very much with all the players on the island. And so the concerns that I raise here today are not my concerns. They are concerns that have actually come from persons who are, yeah?
Mr. Chairman, 1 second. Suggestions, recommendations. You have said a lot, right? I understand you have said a lot, right? But in terms of suggestions, recommendations, I don't know if the chairman will have the time in order to give you to identify one or two, as the case may be. I know you speak on behalf of all your stakeholders in Tobago, and I am happy for that, right? And I know at the end of the day, it would not only benefit Tobago, but it would benefit Trinidad and Tobago. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
No, but regrettably, we wouldn't have the time, ma'am. So what we would need it in somehow in writing, what you suggest, how Carl could improve, and you give us that, and we will do our best to try and get this to the relevant authorities to see how we can help the situation that has been transferred.
I appreciate that so much.
Yes, so we are giving you that opportunity. Member Hislop, I think you had one question.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if it's one question, but just to touch. I know Cal and Tobago is in a very unique place. And I'll give you my personal experience a couple of nights ago. I came up on a flight that left Trinidad at 10:30. No, yes, 10:30. When we landed in Tobago, the flight came to Tobago relatively full. When we landed in Tobago, there was absolutely no one to go back on the return flight, save and said a Caribbean Airlines engineer. And so 70 odd seats went back to Trinidad empty. And the question has to be asked, who absorbs that cost? And so Tobago and Cal is in a unique position that in a lot of times when we have major events on the island, we always find the airlift moving in one direction, the passenger load moving in one direction, I should say. And so there is this dynamic of Tobago and Cal that, as the executive chairman has said, has been long-standing. And we truly look forward to a solution that could be to the benefit of all. But I just have a couple of questions. And the couple of questions I have, Mr. Chairman, would be, one of the ways I believe we can remedy the issue as it relates to visitors to the island is our thrust to increase our direct airlift. And there was a time even before when Cal was still in all its dramas that there was significant visitor arrivals to the island because we had significant direct airlift. So the question is, where are we in regards to direct airlift? And I know in a previous meeting, we had the question about a substantive CEO for TITA. Does the executive chairman see the need for this position to be filled, and where are we in the filling of that position? And where do we stand as an island with regards to increasing our direct airlift, whether it be from our usual source markets, which are Europe, as well as North America and elsewhere? Where do we stand? Because in the submission, I saw that there was the challenge of airlines rearranging their schedule and the aircraft types and so on. But other destinations are not facing what we are facing. So I would like to find out, where are we with regards to a direct airlift and the substantive CEO for TITA?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Hislop, my Tobago brother, for confirming the issues and the challenges that we have with Cal. In terms of the specific questions about the airlift, the agency has always, is always on the lookout for direct airlift to Tobago, right? This is not something new. It is not something that started now. It is something that has always been on the cards, because when you are coming from what we call a long haul destination, which is where most of our markets are, people prefer to have a direct flight, or at least just no more than 1 or 2 stops. The challenge has been that apart from Port of Spain and Jamaica, every other island in the Caribbean pays some sort of subsidy for any direct airlift that it gets. And the size of that subsidy is determined by the airline's projection of how much risk it needs to mitigate on the route, all right? In recent times, we have been going to market because we've met with quite a number of different airlines in Europe and across the region, and we have been talking to them about the possibility of direct lift. Direct lift is available, not as much as before because of the changing out of the fleets, etc., but direct lift is available. But the lift is cost prohibitive to Tobago. In recent times, we have received quotes of 350,000 euros per rotation. That is one movement between Tobago and the particular source market. That's at the bottom end. Some cases it go as high as 400 and something thousand pounds per rotation in terms of what the airline requires to cover its costs for the flight. Some of it may be offset by seats being taken up, but the projection is that that TTAL will have to pick up a part of that subsidy. Our budgetary allocation for the year is $44 million, and I think I would have denominated it in the major currencies that we operate. If you ask an airline to come to you even for 12 weeks in the winter at 350,000 US per rotation, all of your budget is eaten up. And so it is not that we don't know that we need airlift, it's just that we can't afford it in the current arrangement. And what we have been doing, one of the things that is different now is that previously, stakeholders were in the dark about why planes were not coming. People were saying, well, you need to bring this and you need to bring that, because every single day and every single week, we get either an email or we have a direct conversation with somebody who says, why you don't have a flight from Canada? Why you don't have a flight from wherever? And once I start talking about the money, because we've been talking about the money in public and in private, in places like these, in one-on-one situations, once we start doing the arithmetic, the support does not allow us to do so. And I want to point out as well that the support and the subventions have been going down over the years. In 2017 and 18, when TTAL was founded, the allocation for that year was 60, let me pull my numbers, was $65 million in 2018-2019. That's TT dollars. And the TTAL would have received 56 million of that. So that's 2018-2019, the approved subvention was $65 million. In 2020-21, $25 million during COVID. And in 21-22, 22-23, the allocation is $44 million. Mind you, not just has the allocation gone down by about 33%, but the purchasing power of that allocation has also gone down as well, because post-COVID, every single cost we have in the foreign market has gone up. And so it has become even more difficult, no matter how much you stitch elastic and stretch and you do your maths and you do your maneuvering, to be able to afford on a direct way the airlift that we need. And so maybe this is a good opportunity, Mr. Hislop and other members of the JSC, to ask you as we get into the discussions for the 23-24 budgetary allocations, that some consideration be given to a special plight in terms of the cost of charters, and that TTAL may be awarded a more favorable allocation that would allow us to do more in terms of at least having some more direct airlift to the island.
Chairman, if I can interject before you answer the other question.
Yes.
I hear all the figures and I understand all the figures, but I'm juxtaposing that against what is happening at our other Caribbean destinations. So if you said the only two destinations that do not pay for airlift will be Port of Spain and Jamaica. If we go, let's not even go to our super tourism destination called Barbados. Let's deal with Grenada. If we look at the facts, Grenada's figures in terms of their arrivals have increased.
Yes.
And so that's why I'm asking the question as it relates to what is TTAL doing outside of what your allocations may be. What has TTAL been doing within the last 18 months to aggressively go after additional airlift, so that even if you have to pay a subvention, because the airline would be coming relatively full, your payment to the airline will be less, not so?
Yes, thank you so much.
Right.
So we have kind of dovetailed into two things. So you're matching airlift with arrivals. And so we're talking now about marketing. As you know, we would have inherited a situation post-COVID. You've asked about 18 months, and 18 months has coincided with the coming back on board of the opening of the borders, because the borders were opened, I think, in January or February. But in terms of full removal of restrictions, that did not happen until later in the year. When we came in, quite a number of the marketing systems in the source markets had been on pause. There were overseas contracts that had lapsed and were not effected, and a whole host of things were difficult. So we took some time to put that in order. What happened thereafter is that we have continued, what we have done since then is that we have begun and continued as aggressive a marketing program as our budget allowed, because it all comes down to budget. When we had 2 airlines on the route, the BA and the Virgin, more than 50% of the budget was eaten up by the airlift cost. With the moving off of Virgin in January of this year, we have been able to move some of that Virgin cost into marketing. So what you're seeing is that we have been able to do a lot more digital marketing. We have been able to do a lot more campaigns with different trade entities, not just BA, but some of our tour operators, hotel beds, and some of the other people, and we continue to do the work that we have to do. One of the things that we have to remember, though, and I like the example of Grenada, is that during COVID, Grenada did not stop most of its advertising. And so they were always in the front of mind of people. And so their trajectory to recovery has been higher than us. Tobago, for the most part, made the decision not to do a lot of reminder or any advertising during COVID. And so what has to happen, instead of starting here, you're starting somewhere here and we're building up. I think that the numbers are showing recovery in terms of what the quarter is, and we continue to do what we have to do. There is also a time lag between when you take marketing actions and when there is impact. So last year, when we missed that January to May window, because there's usually a 6 to 9 month window of campaigns, etc., for a winter period, etc. So when we missed that time frame between the change of the administration and our appointment, we really missed a huge window for the winter season. Systems and things are a bit better this year. We are working with an always-on campaign, and we are hoping for this year, in terms of our goal, to get back to 2019 numbers plus 10%. And that figure is, that figure is about 21,500 people. So that's where we are.
So we look forward to that. And in terms of the essence of time, I think
the CEO question, Chairman.
Yes.
Oh, yes, right. Yeah. So as you know, we would have gone to market for a CEO, and we would have completed the process with the selected recruitment firm. We would have passed those recommendations as a board to the secretary for the approval by the Executive Council, and we are still awaiting their final feedback on the matter. In terms of whether you need a CEO, you always need a CEO, because a CEO provides leadership to the organization and makes sure that there is operational efficiency. In the last year or so, though, the organization has not been left on autopilot. We've been able to complete our work plan for the last year. We've been able to set an aggressive work plan for this fiscal year, and we continue to operate until that is settled up. I don't want to miss this opportunity to congratulate members of the internal TTAL team for rising to the occasion, and also members of the board and the wider stakeholder group for really supporting us through this time of transition. But we do look forward to the matter being settled on our end.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Member Ayana Webster-Roy, I think you have a question you'd like to pose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I just want to thank the TITA rep for the comments and the recommendations, as well as the responses thus far. Even with the best marketing strategy, even if we get Airlift to the place that we want it to be, what people are yearning for is an experience. People travel for an experience. What is TTAL doing to ensure that Tobago delivers the experience that people expect? How are you engaging the population to understand that tourism is not just for the tourism division, but it's all of the business, and to help to make Tobago the best possible destination and the most attractive destination? That is one. And my other question is for tourism and agriculture. In the presentation, agriculture was noted that high focus is being placed on agriculture, not just in terms of food security, but bolstering the sector. Has any consideration been given to the two divisions, tourism and agriculture, partnering and exploring agro-tourism as a venture for Tobago as well?
Okay, thank you so much for those questions. I was just making a note of them. Yes, the agency has been doing and continues to do what it can to improve tourism awareness and acceptance on the island. One of the challenges that we have that we're working through is that, Tobago would have gone through a rebranding in 2017 that made it not be Green, Clean, Serene, and it became Tobago Beyond. What we realized is that even though the brand was an excellent idea and the brand actually won an international award, a lot of the on-the-ground acceptance of the brand did not really happen in that time frame. So one of the things that we're doing now at the agency as part of our We Are Tobago domestic campaign is that we are using that platform along with some of our other initiatives in terms of cooperation with stakeholders. We had the World Turtle Day recently. We have an upcycling event with the Roxborough Police Youth Club. We're actually using those platforms along with some ongoing work on brand development to actually make the conversation about tourism about business, because business and money is a key motivator for us in that regard. In terms of actual product development, we have done some restructuring of our product development unit to make that unit more outward facing, because coming out of COVID, that department was very much inward facing, and they were doing a lot of administration of the grant and all of that. We have actually assigned specific product officers to the different niches or pillars that we operate in. And we are now testing a system where, along with marketing, there is a lot more outward going arrangement. That's on the one hand. On the second hand, as part of our structure, we have added a portfolio called Tourism Business Development Officer, because we recognize the need within the agency to look at the opportunities that are available in Tobago and to help the population monetize it, and also to retain those cultural traditions. Because one of the things that we know based on our population is that people may be good at the technical things that they do. People may be good at craft, they may be good at jam making, they may be good at tour guiding, but the business aspect of how they can monetize it is difficult. And so a tourism product is not just an asset, right? We have a lot of natural assets on the island. A tourism product is an asset that has been massaged and developed, and to which you have added marketing. And so the role of that tourism business position is really to help with the development, because some of the assets are there in terms of the skills and the capabilities, to add that refining and development of the product, and then to add the marketing of it so that we can actually have new and authentic experiences for the industry. Your final question is in relation to linkages with agriculture. We would have had some discussions with the TADCO and the division some time back in terms of how those entities, how we can cooperate, because everybody eats. Tourists and visitors, everybody eats, and we see a lot of synergy there. There has been some outreach to the Hotel Association, but again, those systems have not traditionally been developed. I expected to come into this arrangement and find maybe an established corridor of cooperation, but that has not happened. So we are building out those corridors of cooperation, cooperating with them in terms of working with some of their projects that they have brought on stream to turn them into tourism products in the first instance to build trust, because there is no MOU arrangement. Everything works on the basis of synergy and mutual alignment of goals. That's the way we are working. And so we're very heartened by the direction that things are happening. And we at TITA will continue to work cooperatively with not just agriculture, but health, with transportation, with police, with customs, with utilities, anybody, to ensure that the product and the visitor experience is the best that we can within our constraints.
Yeah, thank you. So I see there's a lot to be done, a lot I hope in terms of branding. We have to brand certain things for Tobago. We have the Idaho potatoes from abroad. We may need to brand our blue dashing product also. Certain things we have definitely to work towards. And at this stage, we had a fruitful morning, a lot of knowledge we have gotten, and we have realize some of the difficulties that you have been faced with. And as I am now about to close, I will have to simply ask the invite, sorry? Yeah, I would like to invite Mrs. Cheryl Ann Edward Lewis to give any sort of brief closing comments, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, and thank you. I know you highlighted brief. I would just first of all like to quickly respond, if I may, to Stephen Howard. We have been following the concerns by members of the public, and I just want to indicate that Stephen Howard would have asked about whether tours would have been conducted in the future to the mega farms in particular. The answer is no, not at this point in time, because it would be a biosecurity hazard. So we just wanted to quickly indicate that to Mr. Howard. And in the essence of time, I want to indicate that on behalf of the team here at Agriculture, we appreciate the fact that we have been given the opportunity to share the activities that we are engaged in as we seek to build a resilient agricultural sector. We know the concerns from the committee, which centered around greater collaboration, youth in agriculture, the efficient rollout of the mega farm project. So we take the comments and we will indeed pay particular attention to these areas as we continue to move agriculture in Tobago towards the point that we want to see it in terms of sustainability and resilience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now would Mr. Suresh Duku please give us some brief closing comments?
I thank you. You do manage to carry on a long, lively session. But thank you. Let me take the opportunity to thank you to appear before this committee. I trust that the information provided today by our panel provided clarity as we seek to transparently serve within our various capacities. We remain committed to our core values of good governance, transparency, and accountability through fair and responsible public administration, and will submit the additional requested information to the esteemed committee in a timely manner. Thank you, sir, and thank you to the committee.
So I'd like to thank all stakeholders for your attendance and for sharing your invaluable knowledge. I think we've gotten a lot of knowledge, and we have had some things that we would definitely want to put in our report to see if we can at least help that situation go forward in Tobago. I would like to also thank my committee members, the staff of the Office of the Parliament for your procedural and logistical support, the viewing and listening audience. And at this stage, I would like to declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.